Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here with my good friend and colleague Jim Gurley. And we missed a week, Jim, because a couple of hurricanes came running through my backyard. So whether you've been following us chronologically or not, we skipped our first week in a long, long time. But everybody's safe, everybody's good, at least in my circle. A lot of people got hammered, and we'll talk a little bit about that because I think that one of the two things we want to talk about today in relationship to our wheel, the Imperfect Men's Club wheel of life, is the area of relationships. And in the context of relationships, two things that came up in our kind of pregame show, which were um, community and legacy. And with respect to community, Jim, if I may, I'll give a little context. So we had Helene and Milton come through Florida over the last 3 weeks, like one right after the other. And fortunately, I'm in Central Florida, and so we were expected that Milton was going to be real bad. What ended up happening with Helene is it shot up through the Carolinas, and my daughters happen to live in Asheville, North Carolina, which got hammered. And before going on, I'll say that they're fine too. Everyone in our family and friend circle is fine. We got very lucky, and we're very grateful for that. And then Milton, by the time Milton got to Orlando, it was a category 5 out in the Gulf. It was a category 1 when it got here. So we just got a bunch of wind and rain. And but the interesting thing that led us to this topic of community was I went out the next morning with my son to assess the damage, and a big couple of big trees had toppled over. Fortunately, nothing fell on anybody's roof or car, at least in our small area. But as we were clearing the area and the air was clearing, people started coming out of their houses and congregating on lawns. And these are people with various different socioeconomic positions, various different political positions. But it was like, because of the hardship, I won't use the word tragedy because I think that's an embellishment. Nobody died, no, here anyway. Um, these people that disagree on all kinds of other things, politics in particular. Um, there was nothing political about this. Everyone came together and asked, "What can we do to help?" Hey, let me go grab a pair of gloves and I'll come help you bring stuff to the curb. You want me to go get my son? No, hey, you guys hungry? Can I get you some water? It was really. I'm sure you've seen it in your own world, Jim, but it was really a reminder that we're not as divided as we seem to be portrayed to be on TV. And I think that's purposeful because when I was thinking about when we took that break was if we all did get along and start talking again and not being divisive and argumentative and personalizing things, you know what? We wouldn't need the government. And I think that scares the hell out of the government, you know? And then we went and talked about the same things going on in Asheville. The volunteers are coming out of the woodwork. I talk to my daughters a couple times a week. And that goes back to all the way back to in my realm, 9/11. I mean, the whole country came together back then. So that's why I think this community topic is really interesting. I'll toss it over to you, Jim, and get please share your thoughts.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, first of all, obviously, really happy the damage to property didn't affect you too bad, so that's a big deal. But I do want to share the moment, the perspective as far as the moment, because again, we've known each other for a couple of years now, and you rarely show anxiety. You're very good at it, and even when we spoke um, the day before, you had called me. Obviously, you couldn't do the show last week, and then and then I remember starting to realize, wow, this is a big deal, right? The news started reporting what was going to happen, and I sent you a text, obviously, like I was thinking about you, but there's a lot of anxiety going on in the world, and there's what is anxiety, and then there's common anxiety. And so when you're talking about community, you're talking about your neighbors, the people that are around you. There's a moment in time where you have a lot in common, right? That community, and that anxiety level, raises to a point where you either see the good in people or the bad in people. And what you shared with me, your neighbors helping you uh, cut the tree that fell over, and all the different things, and your tenant was helping out, and your son. That's just an example of when some people experience anxiety together, they come together as a community and they get better.
Hmm.
I think that's nature. I think most people do, and that's what we talked about. So, um, yeah, just in fact, read the. I just put the definition on it just because I know sometimes it's just a great way to revisit the meaning of anxiety, and then we'll get into really what this means going forward, and even like we talked about, community and legacy to some degree, right?
Yeah. Before I read the anxiety thing, I want to share this with you because it just popped into my head when you mentioned my son. My son's a big gamer. And
Uh-huh.
so, and he's not, he doesn't jump up and help me with yard work I don't know that he ever has. He's always helpful when I ask him to be,
Hmm.
but so all of a sudden there's no power, there's no internet.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Wow. So
And I thought to myself the day before, I said, dude, you better get yourself a book or something. And he goes, I'll be fine. And he was, because what he did was he jumped up, grabbed some gloves, and we went out in the yard for 3 or 4 hours. And
yeah,
he worked his ass off.
that's
And
very
so
cool.
I don't know where to go with that. Maybe that's for another episode altogether, but I
No,
had to
I don't think
share it.
I don't think it is for an episode. I think it just shows it's exactly what I was hoping to bring out of the word anxiety. We all respond to anxiety differently,
Yeah.
and
So let me read it because I
yeah,
think you're right. I think
please,
it's
yeah,
good context. Anxiety is an emotion that can feel like fear, dread, or uneasiness. It's a normal reaction to stress, like a difficult work problem or an important decision. However, anxiety disorders are conditions where anxiety doesn't go away and can get worse over time. Anxiety disorders are common mental health issues that are highly treatable.
wow. Well, first of all, it fits right into one of the areas of our 5 areas of life, and that's the health, mental health, physical health. It's all
Yep.
related, right?
Yep.
Um, but yeah, it does. And you know what? The best way to deal with anxiety, have a conversation with somebody,
Yeah.
community,
Yeah.
interact.
Yeah.
Anxiety is and here's my definition of anxiety is when you have, well, stress too, anxiety and even fatigue is when your mind is jumping ahead of fear,
Mm-hmm.
or in some cases jumping back of past traumas.
Mm-hmm.
What it really means is you're not present, because if you're present, then you wouldn't have anxiety. That's what the mind is doing. That's why your breathing goes bad, your heart rate, everything, right? So
Yep.
the fact that your son was out there physically helping with the problem probably was very good for the anxiety. There was a physical
No
component
question.
to it. It's all of you, not just your son, obviously, but
All of us. I was just going to say, as people started to get together and
yeah,
start to smile and laugh and recognize that it
yeah,
wasn't as bad as it was supposed to be, and everybody's
yeah.
okay, and
Everybody's okay.
it's a collective benefit. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah,
But I don't want to skip over the compliment that you gave me about how I handle anxiety. I think it's a I feel like it's always been expected of me.
yeah,
Maybe it's the father thing, maybe it's the company owner thing, team captain thing. I don't know. It's just like I
yeah,
always felt like somebody has to be calm, or
yeah,
everyone's going to go nuts. And
yeah.
it always felt like it came naturally to me. And the few times in my life where I've struggled with anxiety, which have not been a lot, I liked it so little. It felt so bad. I'm like, how do I develop skills to get out of this anxious moment? And I
Mhm.
think that, boy, that's a skill that I think everybody could use a little more of in the world today. So it's a great
Mhm.
topic.
Yeah, no, it's something what you said is very important. And again, being in similar situations, either in business or in on the sports field, like you said, as a father, it, it, it as a position of uh let's just say influence or leadership. I don't as
I
you know,
know
I'm
that's
not,
your favorite word.
those aren't my favorite terms, but the fact of the matter is, it's not what happens, it's how we respond to what happens. And the people around us, they look to us, and they look how we respond to those situations. So I am reflecting on that because you stayed very cool, very calm, and you still had a sense of humor. You could have also lost your shit and shown emotion and that, but that's not it's not who you are. That's not what good leaders do, because good leaders are good. Let's forget about the leader thing. Let's talk about legacy, right?
Hmm.
You really probably were more interested in making sure other people were okay and not thinking about yourself. And you knew that if you stayed calm and you stayed focused, it would get through this difficult period in time that was
Hmm.
causing a lot of anxiety for everybody around, right? And I think that's very, very, very cool. As
Yeah,
not
thank you.
everybody can do that.
I
And
appreciate that.
yeah,
You know what's hilarious? It just popped into my head is the movie, the Poseidon Adventure,
yeah,
where the ship turns over and Gene Hackman is the leader, and
uh,
he's constantly having to calm people down. People are freaking out as they're trying to find a way out of the ship, and he's heroic, and he ends up dying at the very end. But all these people get out, and it's like, man, if he wasn't there, I think everybody would have died. Everybody would have drowned. It's a
yeah.
perfect example. Something
Well, it's
goes
a great
real.
legacy story, right?
Yeah,
His legacy will ever be.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and yeah, that's where I'd like to go with today, because um and let's just carry on a little bit further with this anxiety, because it's not just hurricanes in
Mm-hmm.
Florida, right? There is a tremendous amount of political anxiety because we're very close to an election just in a couple
Mm-hmm.
weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, but you can feel the intensity. You can feel the unrest of, and this is not uncommon. I think this is a little bit more intense because, like every election, it seems to get more and more intense. Um, but this is also a cycle, right? We lead up to these elections, they happen, and then things work out. The economy doesn't always fall apart. The system, America, is bigger than the presidency, but it certainly creates a lot of anxiety leading up to it, and along with weather um, catastrophes like what's happened um, in Florida and South Carolina, right?
North Carolina. Yep. Yep.
Oh, North Carolina. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Both, yeah, they both got impacted. But my worldview is Asheville, because that's where my daughters live, and
Hmm.
actually my girlfriend's daughter lives there as well. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, countless stories there of people coming out of the woodwork to
Hmm.
help. And
Hmm.
I'll go back to something I said earlier, Jim. I can't remember if we were recording yet or not, but I think part of the reason that the existing regime, if you will, the people that are in power right now in our country are sweating so bullets and anxious themselves is because if the whole country came together like they did in Asheville or they did in
Hmm.
2011, then the government becomes less necessary. And I
Hmm.
think that scares the shit out of the people that are in power right now. I really do. I think that's part of what's going on. You know?
Well, it certainly does, because anybody that pays taxes, remember, taxes is an agreement. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you part of my income in exchange. You'll provide services when I need them. It's an insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we can go beyond this administration, but it's clear, or based not clear, based on what you've told me, and you have daughters there. Um, the federal government has not been able to deliver what, and people, the community itself and other Americans are stepping up to fill the gap.
Mm-hmm.
You should be concerned if you've taken somebody's money, and then when it comes to render services, you don't. Then you've no longer have an agreement. And I'll before you, I want to hear more what you have to say about this. What's going on with your daughter's community? But I'm seeing it right here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Right, we have. Let's just talk about the city of Oakland that's 15 miles from where I'm at on the other side of the hill where I was born. You have a complete breakdown of police, fire, and government, where
Mm-hmm.
where people have paid taxes to in order to receive services such as fire department and police, and even just maintenance, and it's not happening.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way, they've taken the money and didn't deliver the services, and they continue to do that, and it's happened in San Francisco too. Um, Obviously, Bay Area is a big place. there's many other places that are 100% safe and it just doesn't affect them. But I think it is an example of the same um, group of leaders, or let's just say the same political party, has been in charge for over 30 years, and this is the result. And yet now they're asking for them to trust them one more time.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
think about
I said we weren't going to talk about politics, and we are talking about politics.
it's okay. I think we've developed a pretty good,
Yeah,
I think people know where we stand, but I also think they know we're more interested in talking common sense and
yeah.
practicality and
In
how do
the
we make
context of anxiety and
yeah,
how government is creating this anxiety and fear, which is so sad because this is America. You shouldn't have to fear that you don't live in a safe place, or that these are third
yeah,
world country problems, right? That we're
yeah, they
experiencing in some
are.
of these cities. Yeah.
They are. It's definitely in a new place for me in terms of my lifetime. But I
Yeah.
think, as we're talking about it, I also think that you ask yourself, why is this? Why now? And it's at least in part, and this is just my opinion. Um, we have so
Mhm.
much media,
Yeah.
before you even say who's backing who and who's got control of the media, I'm just talking about so much of it. Like you
Mhm.
can't flip a switch on a device without getting news thrust into your face.
Mhm.
So unless you're willing to shut everything off, you're going to be anxious on some level more so than you were before all this media popped up. When I
Yeah.
was a kid, and I'm not the old guy saying what was once this good or bad, it's just different.
Yeah.
There were literally 3 TV channels,
Mhm.
and I had to stand up and go to the TV to change the channel. Now I turn on my TV and I have like 1,000 options right before my eyes. That's going to have an impact on a human being. And it
Yeah.
certainly does. And you stick a young kid in there and that's the only experience he or she's ever had. That's going to fuck them up. I don't care what side of the situation you're on, you know?
Yeah. I'll share a quick story with you about I was at the high school football game this last Friday, and I was saying a few words before the game. So I arrived early, and they were coming out of the locker room ready to go down to the field. And I was waiting to get down the field because I was going to talk to him down there. So I'm sitting out front, and I realize one of the kids says to another one, "Hey, we ready for picks? Ready for picks?" And I go, "That's odd, picks. Like, why would we be doing a team photo before the game? That doesn't sound right." Well, uh, it turns out that they were doing pics. Basically, they were uploading photographs to their Instagram channel in their uniforms. Yeah, I don't know, Mark. I'm shaking my head too. I don't know about you, but I remember when we weren't allowed to say a single word in the locker room before a game. Not a
Mm-hmm.
single word. Silence. And when you
Yeah.
got in line to walk down the field, you were in absolute, like you were marching together to go get something done. And it just reminded me of a lot of things. Now, again, not an old guy just saying it was better when I was older, but we also didn't have a phone in our pocket.
That's right.
We didn't
That's right.
have a Instagram account that we had to make sure was maintained in order
And you know what the other thing that makes me think of? Not everybody got a trophy either. There was
Oh boy, we can
there
get
was
into that. Yeah,
there was one MVP, right?
there was one
That's
MVP.
the most,
That's
not
right.
not kinda better or
Yeah,
kinda good or okay or acceptable. It's like
it's funny you say that.
that kind of
Oh
shit
boy.
is it's caustic. It's caustic. But
Yeah, yeah.
I think that and the other thing that's interesting from my perspective is I got how many generations do I have? I have arguably that I have access to 4, right? Because I have a grandson. So I have my dad's 96, I'm 63, my kids are in their
Interesting. Yeah.
30s, and my grandson's 8.
Wow.
And so I have a frame of reference there that really is varied, you know?
Mhm.
And I know my father's upbringing. I know the conditions of his youth. I know his
Mhm.
teenage years and his 20s and from 1928 all the way up to 2024. So
Mhm.
it's not a myopic vision of this issue. It's over a broad period of time. I think I've been alive for 7 or 8 presidents, as have you.
Mhm.
So this is not like you're just cherry picking this particular time frame.
Mhm.
No, there's context to this, you
Yeah.
know?
And this goes back to your point earlier about overload of information. And this generation, again, their whole life is lived on this channel, this Instagram channel or TikTok or whatever it is, that
Mhm.
their relevance to the world. And again, I'm just observation. I'm not saying this is true, but it became pretty apparent that these kids were as interested as getting pictures in the uniform than they were winning the game.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
It's as if they got what they needed to be am I making sense in terms of the importance of a picture or to project an image of who you are,
Yeah,
what you do?
what's important, I mean, what's
Yeah,
important to me is like you're bringing your best, you're showing up and you're bringing everything you got
yeah,
and you're prepared. That's what's
yeah.
important, right?
That's
The
right.
next the next important thing is, did you win or did you lose, right?
Yeah.
And then the next important thing is, who do you want to see some of this? So it's like it's ass backwards, right? But
It really is.
you know, but
Yeah.
it's asked backwards because the parents and the leaders and the people in power, they're either letting people get away with this or they're encouraging the behavior, you know?
Or in fairness to them, because I know them very, very well, they don't know what to do either. This is an
Yeah,
overwhelming problem.
fair
A-
enough. Fair enough. Yeah,
And
it's like saying if I was a teacher in high school right now, I would make every kid throw his cell phone into a basket before he walked into class.
yeah.
That I don't know if you can get away with that, I don't know if you
No,
can get
and
away
in
with that.
fact, I think California's getting close to pass some laws where schools are not allowed. You're not allowed to have your phone on during the class because this is where government does have a role to come in and say, this is not good for our youth. It's not a good learning environment. But
Mhm.
again, it kind of goes back to what we're saying. If they let these things go and there was also laws do affect us, right? Our leaders that make these laws eventually affect the way people human behavior. And right now California has a law you're not allowed to suspend a kid any longer because they were able to pass legislation that said that it was unfair to suspend students because the proportion of the students were black or brown. Well, black or brown students, so therefore by not suspending them was part of the equality part of that. You know what? The one thing that the principal had was to threaten a kid for suspension. So what do you
Yeah.
think happened?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what happened.
Yeah, we have now you have a bunch of shithead kids getting away with things that they never would get away with before. Okay, no different than the $900 and below. You can steal something if it's less than $900. You don't even go to jail. They don't even slap you on your
Yeah,
wrist.
yeah.
And
I
then what do
think
you
that
have? A lot of crime. Yeah. I didn't want to make this a political show, but these
no,
things
no,
do.
no. It's fun sometimes to go off on tangents, and sometimes you got to pull back. But I think to
Yeah.
circle back around because I know you're on some constraint. The community thing I think is really. I want to park that kind of like in a yogic fashion. I rub your hands together and bookmark this particular because we forget about these things. A tragedy passes by. I mean, how long did it take after 9/11 for us to forget about 9/11 except for once a year? It
Mhm.
wasn't that long. It was maybe a couple of years, but it wasn't that long. And how long is it going to take for us to forget about this wonderful community, uplifting community experience that just took place here in Florida and Asheville over the last couple of weeks? Let's remember, and so that we don't have to be at each other's throats, that we are neighbors, that we are fellow Americans, that we are fellow human beings, and in regard to the legacy thing, I think that came up as a result of some of the experiences that you and I have had. And frankly, you're about to turn 60, as you mentioned to me earlier. I'm 63. I think it's probably a good argument that if we're just starting to think about what legacy we want to leave now, maybe we could have given that some thought in our 40s and 50s. So anybody listening, you might want to get a jump start on that. But yeah,
Before we wrap up, Mark,
yeah,
let's
yeah.
let's define legacy because I think that you immediately think a legacy has to be your name on a building or a bridge or a legacy something that gets all the accolades, and that's not true. In fact, maybe a legacy could be just, again, the guy in the neighborhood that stepped up when and everybody was in during a difficult time. I think it's important to define your legacy early on and then work towards that. I'll share, just because I'm, like you said, I'm in the middle of preparing for a talk I'm going to do tomorrow. It's an industry talk, and talk about anxiety. Wow. I mean, and this is, by the way, 100% self-induced.
Most of the time it is.
Well, yeah, yes and no. Like I said, I'm fortunately in a position in life where, I have financial freedom that allows me to pick and choose the projects I want. And that's not normally, the anxiety comes from your boss, a deadline or something else. These are self-induced um, uh, deadlines that I know if I don't set, then things just won't get done. Like some anxiety is healthy. You need anxiety. It creates dopamine, it creates achievement. And yeah, there is I think there is a legacy component. I think I told you I just yesterday, believe it or not, submitted this will be my sixth patent. It's a provisional patent, which means I have another year to make some fine adjustment to it. But this was 120-page provisional patent. 120 pages. It's an AI move. It's an industry platform. It could really change the world, or change my industry, I should say. No guarantees, of course. That's why. But I do think I was asking myself, why am I doing this to myself, right? And yeah, there is a legacy. Maybe some ego, but not as much as there used to be. Because I think when you get to my age in life, you better let that ego go, because that's not a good driver. I really do think there's a legacy component that I could leave before I'm gone, before I leave. Just maybe the world could be a little bit better. And patents is one way. The whole nature of a patent is just for that, is to create something that doesn't exist and let others learn from it, benefit from it, or in exchange for the U.S. Patent Office, in return, giving you a 20-year monopoly on that idea. So I think, to your point, we should always be thinking about our legacy, but refining it is really important, based on your value system, and most importantly, your community, right? What impact can you have on your local community? So
yeah, I think it's a responsible thing to do. It's a way of holding oneself accountable, is to focus and think about what impact is this going to have on my legacy, and not in a selfish way. Was I always there when people needed me? What did I
Yep.
always do what I said I was going to do? Did I
Mhm.
generally speaking make the world and the place I was in better in some capacity
Mhm.
before I left it? And
Right.
one of the funniest things along the terms of anxiety, these things just pop into my head. They do to you as well. I'm 12 years old and I'm in the All-Star game, and my dad's the coach, and we're playing another competing town, uh, and I go, all of us went behind the snack bar to pee because we were so nervous right before the game, couple times. And I say, my father goes, "You okay?" I go, "Dad, I am so nervous. I am so anxious right now." And he goes, "Well, if you weren't, you'd either be a liar or an
Yeah.
idiot."
It's good stuff. Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Even, what's it? Sylvester Stallone, I apparently just received some award, and his daughter said to him, I guess before he went on the stage, said, "Dad, you look so calm." And he said, "No, I'm shitting my pants right now." And
Yeah,
even at his stage, with his successes, he gets
yeah,
nervous when he goes up to speaks. And yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I think there's part of us that you need that. There's a rush to that. There's a feeling that's you're alive. If you don't have anxiety, that means you're not doing anything. There's such a thing as healthy anxiety.
yep, yep. You either if you don't have it, you either don't care or you're not aware.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but yeah, what would you have to say to your former 30-year-old self about a legacy? And this is not something you necessarily I'm now answering your question, so I'll let you speak. But this is not something you necessarily have to put out to the world, right? This is the conversation with yourself. This is I refer it as integrity. This is the promise that you made to yourself,
Hmm.
and that you're going to live this life, but you're not doing it so everybody can see. You're doing it because that's your agreement with yourself. But what advice would you have with somebody that's 30 years old in regards to creating a legacy?
Well, I mean, be aware, I suppose, at an earlier age how important it is because it's difficult, I think, when you're 30 to think about what life's going to be like when you're 60 or 70. It's just
Mm-hmm.
it's almost impossible. But
Mm-hmm.
but no one ever said that to me. You know, people talk. My dad talked to me about my reputation. I don't know that the word legacy was ever used, and I think
Mm-hmm.
what you were alluding to is that yeah, legacy is not something that you label yourself as. Legacy is what other people say about you when you're
Mm-hmm.
gone, you know?
Yeah,
So,
interesting. Good
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, yeah, how it evolves from your ego maybe to your legacy as you get
Yeah.
older. When your ego's beaten out of you.
Well, that's if you choose to get better as opposed to bitter, right? That connects back to that.
There's no question. So anyway,
All
all
right,
right,
Jim.
Mark. I think that
Yeah,
was a good one.
yeah, it was. Good luck with your speech, dude.
All right, appreciate it. I'm gonna need that, and I will let you know how it goes.
Thanks.